Chris, welcome to the lightning demos. I'm going to also add your screen share, and I'm going to remove myself. The floor is totally yours.
Thanks, Stefan. Thanks to everyone who's attending, and yeah, fingers crossed that the presentation continues here as well as it started now. I'm Chris Turchin, and I'm happy to talk to you a little bit about workflow in Media Cockpit and just working in Flow. I think the important thing there is not so much the workflow aspect, but really keeping that flow and moving smoothly through the system and stuff. But of course, you know, we have a workflow engine within the system. You can have different workflow stati. They can have as many or few workflows as you want. The states can be global, they can be language specific, whatever. And they can be associated with different object types. What does that mean? So you could have different workflows for your media than for your products, etc. The little screenshot you're seeing there, we'll look at it in the system in a second, is basically editor. You can create the transitions, you can set up permissions and all that cool stuff that you would expect. Within the system, users can transition workflows. That means, you know, from in review to in release. These transitions can support different validations and checks. Is all your data complete? They can support permissions. Am I even allowed to do this transition? And obviously they can also, they include hooks for custom code. So that could be notify some web API that something has happened, or send an email, or start a publication, or all sorts of stuff. We have another module called Media Projects that kind of embeds this whole idea of workflow into a collaboration area. So what Media Projects is really the combination of the workflow that we just saw with the users and tasks and the objects that the workflows are acting on into what we call a project. And a project has everything you would expect. It's got a start and end date. It's got members of a team, the workflow, and based on those parameters, it's able to create different tasks for users as objects move along their lifecycle in the system. Typical workflow in the system, and we'll just go through this live in 1 second. Basically, somebody initiates a workflow, they request data. This data is that creates a task either manually or automatically, which then results in an action. Again, you can, as the workflow progresses, more tasks can be created. There can be a single task, like the data manager has to edit the data, or multiple tasks at the same status. So when it comes to a review, maybe you have different departments that have to be reviewing the data. You've got marketing, product management, legal, etc. And at the end, obviously, things get released. You conversion the data, you can output the data, publish it, etc. But yeah, I don't want to show slides too much because I don't have much time anyway. So from there, I would dive right into the system. And wrong window, multiple browser windows here. But I believe here we are. So I'm already logged in, and I will jump between browser windows and between roles a little bit, obviously, as I progress through the system, but you can see here the relevant stakeholders here. Right now I'm on my dashboard, and I can see I've got some different widgets that are basically shortcuts into different parts of the system. I've got some status reporting and other highlights within the system and tasks, none of which are present at this time. If we look into some of these other submodules here, the PIM, also completely empty. The suite, a handful of data, but nothing of interest, just some representative files here. And we'll dive into this projects module that we're discussing. And we see here, you can have one or many projects. You know, you might have one project for everything in the system, or a general project, and you might have projects for each product, you know, product group or other differentiation. when I look at this project, we heard about it before. We've got these base data, like a start and an end date. We've got members within a project. So in our particular case, I try to keep it really simple in this whole demo, just to get through kind of the functionality without getting caught up on the data. We've got a project manager. We've got somebody from marketing, somebody from legal, and somebody from sourcing for the supplying the data. And as I mentioned, these people have competencies within the project. What that means is when certain tasks arise, they're going to be the default person that's assigned to this task. I can go in here and I can, based on these different task types, so I can create different kinds of tasks. I could say here that a certain person, for example, sourcing, is responsible for those kind of tasks. On the other hand, I can also just create ad hoc tasks. So I can go in and say here, I want to import some new data, import the new supplier data. I might give them a date. The way I am, I would probably say it has to be done right away and ready to go. Oh, and I actually assigned it to the wrong person, so I'm going to edit it again. I wanted to assign that to sourcing. Save. And this is the first time that I'm going to switch roles in the system. So up to this point, I was just some sort of an admin. I'm going into the role of the sourcing person. And you can see here, I have a different dashboard. Again, something that we place a lot of value on, that the users can see what they need to see, what they want to see, and not just some sort of a default. And I can see I have this initial tasks here. So what I'm doing here is I'm importing data over this import module. The module itself, lots of features in terms of what kind of data, what kind of field mappings, etc. I don't have time to go into that. I have a predefined module here to import data, import profile. I can go in here to my desktop, and we can see here, file itself, simple flat file format, a couple of different fields that are mapped to data. I'm going to import that data. And as we can see here, this happens in the background. It might be a really big file. In our case, it's pretty small, so it goes pretty quickly. And we can see here, the system notifies me when things are done. That means I've finished my import, and I now have data in the system. As we look into the PIM now, what we saw was completely empty is filled with data. This hierarchy obviously is flat. It could be as deep as I need it to be. I could have groups, etc. If I look at the data itself here, I can see that there's not much, basically what we saw in that flat file. But a couple of interesting things, and that's kind of what I mean by working in Flow, is that it's not just the workflow and the states. What we've already done here is we've integrated other systems. We've taken these translatable data that we imported, and we've sent them over a machine translation API and translated them into 5 languages. From there, this person might continue on to classify that data. So I can have different classifications or classification systems. These can be standards like SPSC or ETIM or eClass, or they can be customer defined. And so keeping things simple, we're going to classify this as a widget. Widgets are my favorite. And we can see here, whereas before we had little to no data, now we do have different attributes. We can see the system provides different guidance for, are things mandatory or are they optional? We also have context-specific data that's kind of new in this feature. So we could say, okay, show me only the data for a given context, etc. I'm going to continue along here and just maintain a little bit of data by hand and click Save. And we can see the next thing the feature does, the system does to kind of guide us along our way, is completeness scores. It calculates how complete is my data. These quality gates can be kind of configured to say what is good, what is bad, etc. But I've gone ahead and I've done a little bit of maintenance, and now I could go ahead and I could close out that task that I was working on, or I can just go ahead and move the data to the next state. depending on the nature of those tasks, some tasks are mandatory, some are optional. I can either close them or not. In this particular case, I'm just going to skip closing the task, and I'm going to advance this object to the next state. So what we see here is all of a sudden the whole UI is completely changed. Based on what status my data is in the system, I can configure my whole UI to my interface to be appropriate to that particular status. If only particular fields are relevant, if some data should be displayed but not editable, all of that is really easy to configure in a web-based editor. So I could continue along here and look along here and see that I actually don't have to. The task is actually moved on to the other person here, the product manager. So basically my job is done. But let's go ahead and change the state for a couple more objects as well here. So we can see here, again, all of this is freely configurable. I can have different columns. I can share columns with others. I've just set up one here to kind of give us an overview of the data we're looking at there. I'm going to go ahead here and edit using our mass editing feature. And we can see here, could go and edit attributes, or we can go here and set up classifications. And why don't we just do that real quick? And I'm going to reclassify this data as boxes because I like boxes better than widgets. And we can see here, I'm going to save this out. And with that, again, things happen a lot in the background because it could be a lot of data. We can see that the progress is complete. Maybe we will edit a little bit of attribute data. We'll say this is all brand B. Going to update that data. The system also provides, little previews and stuff like that. If you want to do that before, you can see, okay, that had an old data. This is new. I'm going to go ahead and save that out again. And last but not least, we can actually mass update the status as well. So I'm actually still the supplier here. I'm going to send all this data off to the product manager, or maybe not all of it. I don't want to overwhelm them. Going to send off those data here to the next status in the workflow. And with that, I can switch roles again. We've set the states. I'm going to leave my role as sourcing supplier and jump into a new role here as my product manager. And the product manager, we see, all of a sudden has lots of work to do. They have to maintain data on these different objects. They have tasks. They can quickly go to the objects. But maybe first things first, I'm going to go and actually going to switch roles one more time. Sorry, jumping back and forth a lot. But I'm going to go here, and over here, I'm actually the marketing person. I'm going to upload some product data, some product imagery. Why am I doing that? Just because another important part of this workflow in the system, we're saying these are new product images. And we can see here the images have been uploaded. If I switch over to Media Suite, I can see not only that they've already been processed, one of them was rejected. So why was it rejected? The system's going to inform me about that. It's because it doesn't conform to the naming conventions or something like that. If we look, however, at the image that was correctly maintained, we can see here on the one side, it went over an AI and it extracted some metadata about what it is. On the other side, we see here that we've actually assigned it to a bunch of different products automatically. Again, this is what we use, we call pipelines, and we can link the data based on naming conventions, etc. The reason I want to do that now, because it saves a lot of work for our product manager later. So we can go in here and go back and look at our data. And we can see we've got some different stati. The data quality has changed because the number of mandatory fields have changed as well. But if we go in and have a look at something, these two different fields, objects here, we can see one positive aspect. Everything is completely completed with media. We can see some other data here is not maintained yet. So boxes have a height, a width, and a depth, I guess. We can save that out. Another aspect about working with Flow is maybe not doing everything yourself. We can calculate things. We don't have to actually maintain all the data. So that's a little script running in the background there to do that for us. And basically, I think that might actually be done. So I could go ahead here and set my status to review. And if we go back and have a look at that workflow, we can see that when we go to review, we want to have tasks for different people as well. So a couple of things happened. Because the status is review, you can see here, the object is in read-only mode. That's configurable on every workflow, what stats should have what particular mode. And we should, yes. We can see that we have some new tasks as well. So let's say the product manager's in a hurry and they want to just move things along to release because they said that's good enough. He can try to do that, but again, the system can be set up in a way, again, just purely configuration to say that certain tasks are mandatory. And in those particular cases, we have to be done before, they have to be completed before we can continue along. So I'm gonna make one last jump here. And I'm gonna log in as our lawyer who has to do the legal approval. And we can see here too, he has a task to do. I'm gonna go to my product. Still read only, but that doesn't mean I can't comment on it. So I could say here, looks fine. And I have a task to complete. I need to finish my task here. I'm done with the approval. And only then and only then am I able to go here and say, okay, release this product. Whether or not it's the lawyer that would do this or somebody else, that's another thing we could discuss. But go ahead there. And we can see here, do we want to change the status? Yes, we do. And our status is released. On completion of that status, we actually create a version, a snapshot, again, depending on the state of the object. In this case, we said when it's a release state, we want to create a version of that object that optimizes things like publishing, etc., because we don't have to pull all the data from the system. It also makes it possible for users to continue working on the product while publications are still running. So you might be publishing your summer catalog and already working on your winter catalog. It would reference those snapshots. Yeah, and those are kind of like the key highlights of the workflow engine within the system. I think really what I wanted to emphasize much more than the workflow engine and the task is just that it's all about working efficiently and doing things with less, automating tasks where you can, integrating AIs for things like machine translation for web services. Oh, one thing I actually did forget. We kind of looked at the data quality metrics. I'm going to go in here and look back at my dashboard as my admin user. And we saw that we could kind of see it here already. So we can have these different reports. Those reports can be about things like our product state we're looking at right there, or are things like data quality, so the completeness based on those mandatory fields, you know, that can be a really important aspect. And if we look at those, again, the reports can be visualized in different ways. They're telling us here how many, not only how many articles are incomplete, but actually how many fields of data. So they can be very granular and very detailed. And just another really important aspect of moving data through the system and getting it out in the end. And that was my whirlwind tour through the system, and I hope I'm still in time. I haven't heard anything from Stefan yet, so I'm assuming I am.
No, you're very much on time, Chris. This is
All right.
a true lightning demo, I would say.
Oh man, it was a lot of lightning for me.
You did a great job. Do you want to share some closing thoughts with the audience?
Basically, yeah, that's it. I think we're tomorrow, actually, we're releasing a new version, Media Cockpit 12. Anyone that's interested in that, I'm sure there'll be news on all these channels that I listed here. Feel free to reach out to me for more details, or our sales and marketing team as well. But when things go deep, they'll probably contact me anyway. Yeah, it was very interesting experience preparing this, and I hope it was entertaining to people without too much jumping back and forth. That was one thing I was a little bit nervous about, is, you know, with workflows and roles and users ABC, but I hope it was comprehensible for everyone. Yeah, and look forward to hearing from you.
That's cool. I mean, I will share your contact details with everyone after the session has ended as well, so they're free to reach you personally, or of course on the websites and channels that you just shared. I'm gonna remove you from the stream again. I want to thank you, Chris.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good day.